This on France 24 tonight.
Good evening.
We just had a quick listen to Mahmoud Abbas there. Is he right? Is it now impossible for the United States to be an honest broker in the negotiations with Israel? Should there be an international process to replace that?
Listen, it was always an international process dealing with the Israeli and the Palestinian. Don't forget that until now we have the quartet, which is the American, the UN, the Russian, the EU. The man that was running it was the former Prime Minister of Britain, Tony Blair. He did more for himself than for the quartet, but the international community was always involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
But US presidents have always had a frontline role, haven't they? Jimmy Carter,
Absolutely.
Bill Clinton, the list goes on. George
Absolutely.
Bush. I mean, John Kerry tried to get the last attempt going. It has been the United States who are really at the forefront of this, because the understanding has always been that they would be neutral. The Palestinians say Donald Trump is not neutral.
First of all, he's not neutral. He explained it very clearly that he's more for the Israeli side than for the Palestinians. Secondly, historically, even if in the end all the agreements were signed under the auspices of the United States, they were prepared somewhere else. The Oslo Agreement were prepared in Europe and signed in Washington. Even the agreement between Israel and Egypt were signed under Carter regime, but were prepared in Morocco and in Europe. So the agreement between Israeli and Palestinian, Israeli and the Arab world are always being cooked somewhere else, but being served at the American table. It's for sure that the American cannot be completely disqualified. They do have an important role to play. They should not be, and they are not, and they won't be the only one to play it. The Europeans have serious interest. Let's not forget that Europe has very important interests in the region. They are the main supporter of the Palestinian Authority, and they are the main market for the Israeli economy. It's time for Europe to say we want to play a role as well. We have interests. We are the closest one to the region. We have interest in the region. We want to have not only an economical leverage, but we want to have a political leverage as well. And for example, it's what exactly President Macron did last Thursday here in Paris when he received the Israeli Minister of Economy and the Palestinian Minister of Economy. Macron said, I want to see you both coming to us together with concrete project of cooperation. So France is playing a role, is going to play a role, and Europe is going to play a main role as well. Russia is playing a role as well lately. Russians are main player in the region, and last week we saw President Abbas going to see President Putin. A week before we saw Prime Minister Netanyahu going to see President Putin as well. So we do have to take in consideration what the international community has to do and what they want. But at the end of the day, it will be a deal that will have to be signed between Israel and Palestinian, and that's something that we should prepare between the two people.
Well, quite. And Israel says that is the problem, because they say the Palestinians simply won't sit down to talks. There are always preconditions, impossible preconditions, they say, that cannot be met. We saw today Abbas walked out and wouldn't even listen to what the Israeli ambassador had to say. I mean, where do you go when you've got such animosity and so little willingness to talk to the other side? You
are absolutely right. I think that a lot of work has to be done. Once it was said that war is so dangerous to be left in the hand of generals, and I think that peace is too important and too precious to be left only in the hand of politicians. Politicians say one thing in one forum and then something else in another forum. What we have to emphasize today is, first of all, yes, the international community has to play a role. Secondly, yes, it's time to recognize the right of the Palestinian to have a free and independent state. And yes, it's time for the Arab and Muslim countries to recognize Israel. That will guarantee the security of Israel. And yes, it has to be done by promoting economical cooperation, as it was done by President Macron last week in Paris. Civil society cooperation, as it's being done by Israeli and Palestinian on a daily basis. Let's not forget that the last polls are showing that the majority of the Palestinian and the majority of the Israeli wants to live in peace, good neighborhood relationship, and believe in the two-state solution.
Just very briefly, because we're running out of time, can that happen with Mahmoud Abbas and Benjamin Netanyahu in power?
I cannot tell you. I just know that Benjamin Netanyahu has serious problem with the Israeli justice, so I believe that his mind is somewhere else. He does have a coalition that is a very difficult coalition to promote peace and to move forward. It's extreme right who are against the two-state solution.
Pro-settlements.
Exactly, they are for the settlements. They they are part of his coalition, and in this political situation, very fragile political situation in which he is now, it's going to be very difficult for him to dismantle his coalition. And Mahmoud Abbas is weak, is an old man. I do believe that him himself, and I know him, wants seriously to go forward and wants to end his political career as being the one who created the Palestinian state, the one who signed peace treaty with Israel. I'm not sure that the people above him are doing exactly what he wants. And I'm very sorry to see many Palestinians, including some Palestinian ambassadors, are boycotting dialogue with Israelis. That's a mistake. We should promote dialogue, cooperation between Israel and Palestinians on a daily basis.
Okay, Ofer Bronchtein, thank you very much.
Thank you.